Hey everyone, and welcome to the Private Podcast, where we plug in and explore the intersection of privacy, human rights, technology, and democracy. I'm your host, Derek E. Silva. Today we're speaking with Rob Shavell. Rob is the CEO of Abine and DeleteMe, the online privacy company. Rob has been quoted as a privacy expert in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, The Telegraph, NPR, ABC, NBC, and Fox. Rob is a vocal proponent of privacy legislation reform, including the California Privacy Rights Act. And now, over to the conversation with Rob Shavell. Hey, Rob, thanks for joining us here on the Private Podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Terrific. I've done a little bit of research. My team put together some information, so I think everybody's going to be really excited to hear more about Abine and DeleteMe. But before we get that far, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to co-found Abine and start building these privacy protecting tools that you guys produce?
Sure. I'm very similar to most entrepreneurs. Uh, can't basically unhireable. So you have to create your own job because nobody will hire you for a
Guilty.
variety of reasons. So I think there's probably some listeners that can identify with that. And really, the reason why I started helped start with two much smarter co-founders of mine that came from MIT and are much more technical. Every company needs a dumb guy to call out the
Be
issues
the
that the
fall
normal
guy?
people have with software. That's me. But the reason why we started the company and we started about 10 years ago uh, was because we looked at all of the excitement over social media. Facebook at the time was not even a public company. Uh, and now, as of this week, they're upset when their stock price lost 200, billion dollars. So imagine, 10 years ago, if you can remember back, Facebook wasn't even worth $200 billion, which they lost this week.
I
So
remember
it was very
pre-Facebook,
different.
so I'm old.
It was well, I'm just saying it was a very different time, and it was so different. The technology moved so fast; it's almost hard to sort of remember it in the way that it really was. And at any rate, everybody was so excited. All the investors and the tech people were so excited. I mean, 9 out of 10 people you'd ask were so excited about all of the data sharing that was happening and all the social sharing and all this information that everybody could broadcast basically. The Facebook news feed was really hot, all
Yeah.
this stuff. Um, and we got together, and there were some companies that were doing well, like Lifelock, selling identity theft protection and things like that. And we sort of had a conversation. We said, look, these companies are selling insurance. They're basically BS. They only help you after the fact, and they
Yeah.
rarely help you anyway. Whereas we've got this. Whereas everybody else is excited about all this data sharing, and it doesn't really make sense. We scratched our head and said, thinking forward a little bit, it doesn't really make sense. Like, humans are social animals, but we are very deliberate in who we share what information with. We always have. Like, we say we give our friends certain information, our work colleagues other information, our families yet other information, and we manage that very carefully. And for lack of a better word, let's call it privacy, or the control of what information you share with whom. And that's been flattened out and sort of corrupted by the internet and by social media, and all this data that's going into the cloud can live forever. And so we sort of
Yeah.
tried to figure out what a solution to that problem might look like, and came up with a few products that are housed under the parent company Abine. The most popular of which now, and the most well known, is called DeleteMe.
Yeah. So you're right. I remember, for anybody who isn't old enough to remember this, or maybe just hasn't seen it because you're not American or Canadian, because Lord knows we get enough American channels up here. I remember the LifeLock commercials of the president and CEO driving around neighborhoods with his social security number on the side of a truck, saying like, "Try to steal my identity." Lo and behold, it's happened a couple of times. People have successfully stolen his identity like two or three times, and he had LifeLock to help clean up the mess, obviously. but like certainly it wasn't foolproof. Maybe it was hard, but people proved to him that it was possible, and that was an opportunity for him to show, okay, well, even though it happened, we'll clean up the mess. Great, good for you. But like, certainly nothing is foolproof. And I do remember even before Facebook, MySpace was huge, and people were posting and sharing all sorts of information there, and I remember hearing stories of that coming to bite people in the bum, later when they were trying to get a job or getting to university or whatever, because of whether you agree at the time that smoking marijuana was illegal or not and things like that, or getting binge drinking on the weekend and posting your pictures on MySpace publicly. Generally not a good idea regardless, but that sort of stuff had implications for all sorts of people, later on in life, whether it was 6 months later or 10 years later. So yeah, it's this whole idea of like, just put it out there, people want to see it, it's going to be good for you, or what have you. I think we've really seen that that's not the case. And certainly, like, I rarely touch Facebook these days. If I do, it's because I'm managing a business page, and then I'll see what my friends are posting, and they're all posting very little these days as well, but more than me. And even with Twitter, my rule has always been, if I'm not willing to say it in a bar, in a public place, I'm not going to post it on Twitter. And thankfully that's I've fallen afoul of my own personal rule there a couple times, but generally that's served me fairly well, because it's these are public statements I'm confident making publicly, and otherwise I keep my mouth shut, or I complain privately to my friends and family like we would in the olden days. But yeah, it's definitely been something where it's really benefited the companies actually hosting those platforms, as opposed to the users, generally speaking, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. And look, I mean, we're not we're a privacy company, and and all the rest of it, and we believe very strongly that people should have control and choice over their data. That said, I'm not a religious or a zealot about privacy. I have a Facebook account, and many of our customers have information all over the internet that they feel strongly that they want made available publicly.
Yeah.
Whether it's social media profiles that they carefully curate, or it's LinkedIn and other other information that they want about them. That's part of their online reputation. It's part of their digital identity.
Right.
At the same time, uh, what's happened is that all of that detritus from the past, all of that stuff that you weren't thinking about perhaps when you were younger or in a different context, just like you were talking about MySpace, all that stuff has unfortunately never left the databases or the servers. And in the meantime, since X or Y post happened, or whatever, innocently, the data brokers and the whole entire tech industry has gotten far more sophisticated at correlating all of this random information that we felt, and rightly so at the time, was sort of meant for a context and would stay in that context. Right. And they've been able to connect it all together through web scraping and identity resolution technologies and machine learning. And so the ability for companies to cheaply aggregate tons of information about us, turn it into profiles that are very rich and very detailed, that we never said okay to, we never even knew they existed, has happened. And here we are in 2022, and there's hundreds of these data brokers with profiles about everyone pretty much across the globe that uses the internet. And we think, and a lot of our customers think, that's not fair. It's not how it should be. And we're trying to rectify that situation. There's a long path ahead, and it requires both solutions like DeleteMe, as well as laws in different countries, giving citizens more rights to access and control the data that's held about them by third parties.
Agreed. Yeah. So in that context, can you tell us a little bit more about, you said the most popular product is DeleteMe. How does that work? That almost sounds, obviously it's a privacy product. Almost sounds like maybe you could use it in a little bit of reputation management type context. But tell us a little bit about DeleteMe and how it actually works. So if somebody pays for it.
Sure. Well, first of all, you don't have to pay for it in one important sense, which is what we do at DeleteMe is very, very simple, and we publish it open source
Oh, okay.
as a set of hundreds of DIY guides, we call them, that break out how to opt yourself out of these different data brokers step by step, and it makes
Okay.
it super easy. It's almost like a cheat code for doing these things fast. And if you go to our website, which is on joindeleteme.com, you'll see right on the top menu there's a very easy to find link that says free guide, and you can go kind of do
Yep.
this yourself, so you don't have to pay for the service. However, if you do want to if you do want to if you have an extra $129 rolling around in your jeans pockets, you can pay us and our privacy advisor experts to go do this work for you across, dozens and dozens and dozens of these different data brokers. And what happens, to answer your question directly about what is DeleteMe and what is it like as a service, you go to joindeleteme.com, you sign up by creating an account just like you would anywhere else. You give us the public information that you want, the personal information rather, that you want to see whether the data brokers out there are broadcasting, selling, and having their profiles. So you enter, just a standard set of forms in with your home address, past addresses, email, cell phone number, relatives' names, and any other detail that you might want redacted from unwanted, exposed places on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, you hit submit, and we do the rest. And in fact, there's a little notice that goes up and says, "Hey, we'll get to work, and you'll receive a series of privacy reports in your email box, and you can access it through your online dashboard as well." And it basically is very simple. It shows you exactly where we found exactly what information and where we requested that information to be opted out and removed. And that process can take anywhere from 24 hours from some data brokers that remove things very quickly and are responsive and sort of are good citizens, to several months for some of the worst actors out there.
Wow.
So what we do is we give you a report 4 times a year as a typical annual subscriber, and we go back every 3 months and recheck all of these different sources for you to see if your information has reappeared or if we missed something. And then if we find anything else, we go through the process once again and relentlessly repeat all of this stuff to make sure your information and your digital footprint is indeed lowered. And so that is how the service works and what it feels like to sign up.
Cool. I tried to do the free scan, but because I'm in Canada, you guys don't have my municipality in here. Does the rest of the service work outside?
The good news is, very shortly, I almost should have waited to do this podcast. Very shortly, we will be introducing the global service. It has been a U.S. only service because the U.S. data brokers are the worst. And the data about Americans that's out there is the most aggressive and detailed of any country that we've seen. However, this issue is prevalent in pretty much every country these days. Even China last year introduced a personal data policy of all places. And so it's really a global issue, and we are currently beta testing the DeleteMe service in Canada, in 10 or 15 countries in Europe and Asia, and it will be global, but it's a little bit of a journey for us to get there. So I'm sorry
Yeah.
you couldn't use the free scan, but
Oh, that's fine. For better or worse, it's fairly typical to see services like this be focused on the U.S. On the one hand, it's a huge population, big market. I know from talking to friends in the U.S. that it's stupidly easy to find information about people. Like, if you have somebody's license plate, or their prior home address or something like that, like, court documents are important to have publicly, but like it's actually incredibly easy to find. I worked for I worked for Bloom Protocol for a few years, and I remember them showing me how easy it was to find like the one co-founder's mom's address because he used to live there. And like, as a co-founder of a company that had a token sale and all that, you become a target because all of a sudden people know that you have access, whether it's a multi-sig or whatever, to a large amount of funds. And then the Ledger hardware wallet data breach, database customer database didn't help in that regard, and a bunch
sure.
of people started getting knocks on doors or phone calls, and like colleagues, coworkers of mine, and so it's scary to actually see, like, personally, like, I've been to there's a quote here from the New York Times. I've been to 123people.com, Spokeo, places like that, or sites like that. And yeah, like it's too easy as far as I'm concerned. It's not even the phone book anymore. It's like you said, it's all this information collated, double checked, etc., and maybe three past addresses. And I'm like, I'm literally like one step away here from being able to steal this person's identity and apply for a loan online. Like, this is not this is really weird.
No doubt. No doubt, and it's interesting, the example that you gave, because a lot of our a lot of our customers have experienced some kind of incident. Could be as sort of innocent as trolling or harassment, and sometimes it could be as scary as a knock on the door, physical threats, uh, and those things have happened because on their online personal information was easy as pie to
Mm-hmm.
find.
Mm-hmm.
And so the general uh, frustration that can be taken out by anyone on the internet uh, against anyone else for any reason, and can move from online, where harms are relatively innocuous, to potentially offline, where in the physical world it gets much more serious, is serious, and both individuals and companies are experiencing heightened uh, incidents and concerns related to this. And that has driven a lot of growth in our business, both at the individual consumer level and at the corporate level, where we have hundreds of companies, including, as you noted in your use case, crypto companies, companies going IPO, companies in the gaming space where there's a lot of people,
Yeah.
playing a game and frustrated. I mean, we have companies signing up employees and executives for these exact reasons from all over the place. And in one way, it's great, because as a founder or a co-founder of the company, I love to see us profitable and growing. In another way, it's concerning, because it's a reflection of the fact that harassment is changing, and people need ways and tools to protect themselves against
Yeah.
modern forms of harassment.
Yeah. No, that's an unfortunate but good example of the sorts of need for this. So, uh, you've kind of blown through like the next four questions I wanted to ask here, which is great because we went through them in a far more organic way than me just hammering you with question after question. Um, Do you have any, like, you've mentioned some examples already of companies who have IPO'd recently, or crypto slash blockchain companies, people like that. Are there any stories, without naming names obviously, that come to mind from 2021 maybe, that you heard about, where you're like, wow, like, thank goodness we built this thing in the first place, otherwise this person would have been, up a creek without a paddle?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. You know, I'll go through a few of them. You know, one is, and we're very, I think, proud of this, is we're protecting a lot of the judiciary, judges
Mm,
out there today, and frontline law enforcement.
yeah.
And the reasons are sort of obvious, right? That's the most basic sort of form of irrational revenge somebody could take
Yeah.
uh, against somebody simply trying to do their job, right? And so, for those kinds of people, which are, you know, uh, increasingly, I think, going to be de facto customers for us, um, the having a service like this, whether it's from us or somebody else, is going to be just, like getting coffee in the morning. Like, you have to have your digital identity protected
Hmm.
uh, because of what you do each day. Um, Meanwhile, in other, I guess, other examples that come to mind, um, would be, you know, I guess, for lack of a better word, correlated to the Me Too movement in some senses, or just, the generally speaking, and I hate to draw the causal arrow, you know, uh, too much, but, you know, threats against women, from men, whether they emanate from workplace relationships, or from relationships outside of work. There are, more examples that we have of women being harassed, um, and even, followed around to their physical addresses and things like that. Um, and you know, we have in the past had partnerships with the National Network to End Domestic Violence, and indeed, we continue to see these kinds of examples of harassment come up. Now, I think those are kinds of examples of sort of very in your face, very easy to understand reasons why somebody would want a service like this, become a DeleteMe customer, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We did a survey, because we're a privacy company. We collect no data from a marketing perspective that we don't absolutely have to.
Yeah.
We need your credit card. Stripe gets it. We don't have it, but
Right.
in general, our ethos is data minimization. But we did a survey, and we asked our customers, hey, why did you sign up? And it was interesting. It really fell into two buckets of reasons for people using the service. One was, and roughly split, about half our customers were in each bucket. One was, hey, I've had some incident, something concerned me, something creeped me out. I had somebody send me an inappropriate email, or tell
Hmm.
me that where I lived, or what have you, some kind of incident.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, let me go see what's out there. The other half of our customers were very much like, hey, I just don't like this information being out there. I Googled myself,
Yeah.
okay? And way too much information came up. Way too much.
Yeah.
My house came up. I don't want my landlord knowing where my past address was, or my, this person. And it came up, and it was super easy to find my cell phone number, and, my
Hmm.
children's names. And, look, 10% of the searches on Google are for people. That's a huge
Wow.
amount. That's trillions of searches a year. I mean, we use Google like the phone book. We're social creatures. We're always looking for information about people. Most of the time, it's harmless, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and indeed useful. But look, there's a reason why these profiles about us are SEOing on Google very highly, because these data brokers do everything they can to get their databases about us without our permission, and
Right.
these detailed profiles that they're selling to anyone that wants to buy it about us, ranked highly in Google. So unfortunately, the that in itself is disturbing more and more people. And as these profiles get more detailed, by the way, when we started this service, there was less than 500 specific individual fields of personal information that we would typically find on one of our members throughout the year. Now there's
Right.
over 2,500. Now there's over 2,500. So it's gone up 500 times in the last 6 or 7 years. The amount of PII that these average data that we find on the data brokers, 500% increase.
I don't even know,
So
like, what would 2,500 attributes even look like? Like,
not
is
necessarily
religious,
all.
yes or no? Or like,
Yeah, it's not. So we have to look at definitions carefully. It's not necessarily distinct attributes. It's the totality of different fields of PII that we find across all of the different data brokers. So that could
mhm.
be, we found your cell phone number 17 times out of
Oh,
a
okay.
hundred different data out of 100 different data brokers. But the point is, their profiles are getting more detailed, and each
Yeah.
one of these guys is getting more information and more detail about every citizen.
Do you know whether they are also selling data to each other to help fill each other's like fields, like Spokio's buying information from white pages and stuff like that?
My Here's my answer to that, and I'm guessing like the next person, because none of these data brokers will ever tell you a where they get their information,
Of course.
and b where they sell it to. And by the way, my belief is that data brokers will sell your information to anyone.
Hmm.
You know, Sergey from the Russian Political Action Committee to reelect Trump. Sure, no problem. George Soros's ultra democratic blah blah blah. No problem.
Yeah.
There's no ethics. There's no standards of ethics. The dollar reigns supreme. And so, life insurers, healthcare companies, employers doing background checks. I mean, who really knows? The only people that know are the sales teams inside of the data brokers themselves. But in terms of if they're selling to each other or not, I can tell you that I bet the big guys are not, because they're competing with each other, and these are
Yeah.
really big businesses. These are businesses making hundreds of millions of dollars. So they are, there are professional CEOs there. They are running a tight ship,
Hmm.
and I think they are competing with each other on data. There is a lower tier of data brokers that are not like that at all.
Yeah.
That are run by one person in their bedroom. They may be offshore in some, particularly unlitigious foreign country, and I bet they sell data to fill to each other all the time for as cheap an amount as possible. And indeed, one of the things that we do with our service is we pay attention to which data brokers are quote unquote going out of business and then reconstituting themselves under a new name. It is a giant game of whack-a-mole, and we've been covering and offering the service for so many years now that we've seen probably 100% turnover in the data brokers since we've been around.
Wow. Okay. Um, can you just want to be cognizant of time? Can you give us a bit of an overview of some of the other products Abine builds? You guys have I guess somewhat traditional um, password manager that also handles payments and some other things, and then or payments and also an email masking tool that looks similar to I imagine you guys were probably first, but similar to what Apple now offers on iOS of signing up for
We
stuff with
were
them.
way first, way first. It's nice to see. It's nice to see Apple copy you, though.
Yeah,
Um,
that's when you know you've made it.
yeah, I mean, Tim Cook makes more money than our email masking product every time he moves from you know
From
one
home to
one half
work.
step.
Okay.
So yeah, so look, when we started the company, as I told you, we wanted to try to solve the problem, not just provide insurance like the identity protection companies. We
Right.
wanted to have a concrete and effective set of solutions. And so we originally came up with three products to handle the three big fundamental problems that we found to be true in online privacy. One is stop the data leaking out from your browser every time you use the internet. And so we built a tracker blocker, which over the years has morphed more or less into what people know as ad blockers. The original intent was not to block ads, but rather to block the tracking, the third party tracking that happens in JavaScript when you're browsing around.
Right.
Uh, Google Analytics being the most prevalent of all trackers, Facebook like button, and other things being similar, but there are hundreds and hundreds of ad tech companies that try to track you across the web. And in another vindication, which is not as concrete as Apple's copying our masked emails, um, most of the internet browsers, including a future version of Chrome and currently Safari, have now stopped allowing third-party cookies, the type of
Yeah.
cookies that allow you to be followed across the different websites that you visit without really your truly explicit permission. So, we see the world moving towards where we've been. But that was the first product that was one of the first products we built. And then the second one was what you referred to, which is a traditional password manager. We don't consider it to be traditional, but the product is called Blur these days, and we only built a password manager because we needed to, not because we wanted to facilitate these masking services. And the masking services give you new phones, new credit cards, and new email addresses when you want to give them out to third parties. It's that simple. And it gives you the choice when you are asked for your personal information to give it out to that party that you're doing business with that's asking you for it, or
Right.
to give a masked version of it out, which will silently and privately forward back to you. And what do I mean by forward back to you? Well, when you give out a masked credit card, they charge that card. It's a unique card. It's almost like having a virtual gift card.
Mm-hmm.
They charge that card. The charge works. It's a regular MasterCard or a Visa. And we, Abine, charge your personal real credit card that you're trying to keep private for the same amount. Same
Okay.
thing with a phone number. If somebody calls the phone that you've given out, your mass phone number, we forward that call or that SMS to your personal private cell phone number. And
I
with
need that.
emails, the same thing.
I
Yeah.
I'm not so worried about the credit card personally. Like, there's the data broker side of that potentially. Stripe has been a fairly good actor, I would say, at least as far as I know, since they started. But certainly for phone number, like I hate, like I've got open phone, for like a business phone number, one in the U.S., one in Canada, just to look friendly. But I guess sure, you want to call me an American number, that's fine. Like maybe you don't have a long distance plan, or maybe your carrier doesn't allow free calls to Canada. That's cool. Here's my 415 number. No, I'm not in San Francisco. Um, I've answered that question enough times. But for like UPS, oh, we're gonna need to text you to make sure that we need a number to call you in case there's a problem with your delivery. It's my I don't feel like paying another $5 a month for yet another phone number that if I keep reusing anyway is the same thing's gonna happen, right? That this number will get associated with so many services, and UPS goes under, or some other company goes under, and that data gets sold because yeah, we need to make we need
Correct.
to make up as much money as possible for our creditors. And sell all this data to Spokio or to some dude in Lithuania in his bedroom, or some woman in Lithuania in her bedroom, who's running this fly by night data brokerage and collecting company. Then it's out there, and then I feel like I have to go through the same thing again. Oh, I need to dump that number and get a new one. So it doesn't really, at the end of the day, if I just have one extra phone number, that doesn't, especially if it's through an app I'm paying for with my credit card, doesn't really feel that particularly helpful. But I guess what I really want to know is, like, we talked earlier about I can't do the free scan because I'm in Canada. Does the Mast cards, the Mast phone, does that work outside the US as well, or is that US
Yeah,
only?
it does. It
Oh, nice.
does. It's a global service, and you can get
Terrific.
numbers, and obviously you can get different phone numbers in your local country. The credit cards work only in certain countries because of
Okay.
regulations and things like that.
Sure.
The emails work everywhere, obviously. Uh, and look, I mean, when we talk about privacy tools and so forth, I want to be very clear, and we always try to be as a company. Um, Nothing's perfect. We get customers to say, "Hey, you're delete me. Can you delete me from the internet?" And our customer support reps, God bless them, they're amazing people. I need to take them out to dinner more. Uh, they have
When
to
we're allowed
tell
to.
they have to tell our prospects, yeah, when the pandemic ends, uh, they have to tell people, hey, look, there's such a thing as the First Amendment, and in the U.S. at least, and
Hmm.
there you cannot remove all information about you from all places. However, and this is, we hear this a lot too. What sort of what you stated, which is like, oh, is it really useful? Like, if I use a different phone number, but I keep using that phone number, if I use a different credit card, does it really help? Um, and look, I'm less concerned about a data breach. I mean, we have proven, I think, beyond any doubt that companies cannot secure data, and like, I'm very skeptical that that's going to change.
Right.
There's a database. If somebody wants to get into it badly enough, they can find a way. Security is economics, as the saying goes. However, um, any any interruption that you can put, any friction point that anybody can put into this correlation of
Hmm.
data,
Hmm.
that data brokers and other marketing entities and robocallers and who knows what are using, is phenomenally effective. And here's why: it's not perfect for obvious reasons, and it's never
Yeah.
going to be perfect. You're never going to get anonymity, but it's phenomenally effective because these guys are like everybody else. They're lazy. If
Yeah.
their database doesn't correlate to their primary key, which is your unique identifier, your particular phone number, your particular credit card number, your particular email address, your particular IP address, if they can't correlate that all easily, then they just give up and go on to the next record because the next
Yeah.
person hasn't done it.
Right.
So it is quite effective to use credentials that are not always your personal credentials. I
Yeah.
would say. I would argue.
Yeah. Like you said, people are lazy, and this was even, I went to an IT security course back in college. I was trained to be a sysadmin and a network admin, and part of the security course was reminding you that nothing's perfect, but if you can put up enough hurdles that the attacker is just like, forget it. Like, I'm just going to move to an easier target. They will, because they have other targets they're probably willing to go after, unless it's an advanced persistent threat, or a state actor who's like, no, I really want to get into Abinds customer database. Which of course leads me to, like, you guys. The natural next question is, you guys must be
I
in
know
at a
what's coming.
very attractive target. So what are we doing? And don't tell me like bank level security, because I've seen
No,
banks, leak data before too. Like what sorts of
no, we
things
get
do you guys do? Like I imagine there has to be firewalls in place, hardware firewalls probably in place, data leakage prevention, data leakage detection in case something does happen. Like what are you guys doing there to help prevent, even if you only have my data for a year because you're matching hashes or whatever. Yeah, like what do you guys do on your side to help prevent the Russian government, what's the name of that Russian hacking group, something bear, angry bear or whatever,
yeah.
lazy bear I think it is, and APT 26 or whatever from China, from getting into Abinds customer database.
Yeah, we get this question a lot. Um, I understand why, and it's actually not because of what you alluded to, which is, oh, Avon must have a really big honeypot of data that's really economically attractive to hackers. We don't, um, but we have data. We have our database, and just like every other company, we have to defend it,
Hmm.
and more than your typical company, because we're a privacy company. We
Yeah.
only make money. We only have one revenue model. You pay for privacy.
Yeah.
Okay. We've never sold a piece of data. We never will. We have no other revenue model. So if we lose the trust of our customers that we built up over a decade, we're out of business, like lickety split.
Yeah.
So obviously, trust is core to our business and is critically important. In fact, one might argue it is our business. So what do we do? Number one, with DeleteMe, uh, we have the advantage of not actually having any data that's not already public.
True.
uh, so our databases only ask you for the information that we could reasonably expect to be already made public
Right.
and that we can redact. So it's relatively innocuous. If we do have a data breach, uh, what I would the email that I would write, which believe me, I've drafted,
Got it ready
would
just in
say,
case.
yeah, "Hey, look, this is the modern world. As a leader of any company in technology, if you haven't written that email, you need to write it. It's sobering, and I hope I don't have to edit it and publish it. But the point is, it would say, hey, look, we are extremely sorry. Here's the exact, uh, findings that and details of what we've been able to learn, and here's what data was breached about our customers, and for the most part, the maximum that it could contain would be your your address, your phone numbers, your emails. That's about it, unless of course our payment processor Stripe had a data breach which would affect hundreds of millions of companies. So
Yeah.
we'd be lost in that noise. On a more on a more on a higher security level, the information that we store in the password manager in Blur
Hmm.
is much more critical.
Right.
Obviously, it's some of the most critical information that you could possibly have stored in any binary format. Uh, and so there, the principle that we use is host-proof hosting. So in effect, you download a client. What that means for those that are less technical is you download our password manager. You don't download our client software running in your browser or on your iPhone or Android. And on that phone, in your software, there's an encryption library that uses your master passphrase and a token that is only known on your computer to you, never sent to our server, that
Hmm.
encrypts all that data. And when you sync it across devices, yes, it goes up to our server, but it goes up as an encrypted blob of data that we can never decrypt.
Got it.
So, in essence, that's the security protocol that we use fundamentally. In addition to all that, do all those things that you were talking about, or we strive to do all the typical network defense and safety protocols that you talk about. And in fact, we're going through our SOC 2 audit process and all that other, jargon that you started off calling bank level security, which I agree with is a bunch of jargon, and has been, and I would note, as I started in the very beginning, to say that even though all those things exist and we're doing them and every other competent company is also doing them, they still have data breaches. So, put two and two together.
Yeah. Well, it was a good point, good and valid point for you to say, like, well, the data we're storing is mostly the data you're trying to ask us to scrub, right? So off these data brokers. So you have a feeling that it's already out there. So fair point. You're right. It's not quite the honeypot I was thinking and presenting it might be. All right, we're coming up to time here. So I want to get away from this and maybe ask one or two questions about some other things. I think I saw in the research that my assistant provided. You've spoken a little bit about employee surveillance. What are your thoughts on employee surveillance? Pardon me, especially when it comes to this far more far higher level of remote work that we suddenly found ourselves in a couple of years ago.
Well, I think it's a bad thing, and I think it's pretty simple. One, if employers are doing it, they should be, and they better be absolutely transparent about it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever have IT, tell everyone to download something, and then one of its jobs is to send back surveillance of usage of your, corporate laptop or something, secretly, right? So if employers are going to do it, they better be transparent about it. And if they are transparent about it, I think the employees, especially in this new environment where there's so much work from home, are going to think twice about how long they want to be with that company. I just think it's a principle grounded on the opposite of what I said our business is grounded on, which is trust. So I think it's just bad, and I think it will ultimately hurt employers that want to use surveillance type practices on their employees.
Sure, fair enough. I think that's a fair point. I do remember encountering that sort of thing in high school for the first time, and I was like, "What the heck is this thing? What's this like antifreeze or whatever it was called at the time back in like I don't know 2000 2001?" And of course we all found ways around it. But it was really annoying, and like we thought we were trying to do really innocuous things, and like just like I wanted to go watch this video, like what's the big deal? And it's not safe for school, like it's not a mature rated type piece of content, and yet we're blocked from doing so. Some of it was probably bandwidth related because I think we had like a T1 or something for the entire school, maybe a T3 at best. But I told you I'm old. But maybe a really good ISDN line. I don't know how fast it was. It certainly wasn't fast, but at the same time, it was the late 90s, early 2000s. You didn't need, you didn't have web pages that were like 5 megs plus all the ads on top and stuff. So it was a different time. Finally, besides taking your customer service team out to dinner more often, what are you looking forward to this year? And do you expect any more positive developments on the privacy front?
Man, my first answer would be what everybody's looking forward to, which is, a pandemic going to an endemic. Please, can we please, get out of this thing, somewhat intact. Very hopeful about that, obviously, and a return to some semblance of normalcy. And then on the privacy front, I would love to see, I'm skeptical that it's going to happen this year, but I'd love to see some kind of bipartisan privacy bill at the federal level in the United States that mimics some of the framework of the GDPR and so forth. I think everyone in the U.S., Republican or Democrat, can agree that the data is a little bit out of control. and that citizens should have basic rights. I don't think it has to go that far. I don't think it has to do everything that the California Democrats want, and I don't think it has to be completely watered down like some Texas Republicans want. I think it can go straight down the middle and just give citizens rights to access their data, uh, remove it if they want, correct it if it's incorrect, and that's a little I think people deserve it. I think it's going to come, if not this year, in the coming years, and I think people deserve it. And it is a little self-serving because that will help us create a even better DeleteMe service.
Well, I mean, yeah, you'll ultimately be able to provide a better service to especially Americans in that case. And I think where similar laws come into play, let's be honest, there are some countries in Eastern Europe and maybe Western Asia where it's kind of a Wild West type of thing when it comes to this. And I know that there are companies or fly-by-night operations based in those locales where there are no rules about this. So you put your base of operations there. You get some coders together. Put a web scraper or whatever thing together and collect all this data. And nobody's telling you can't. Um, as any sort of privacy law starts to become more prevalent in more places. Obviously, as long as it's written well and allows a smaller company to grow, which I think some are having issues with in Europe with the GDPR. Um, yeah, we all win, hopefully. So good stuff. Rob, thanks so much for your time. We used almost the whole hour, so thanks for telling us more about Abine and DeleteMe. I'll give you a chance to plug if people want to follow you or in a positive way, and or learn more about the products. Where should they go?
Um, yeah, thanks, and thanks for having me. It was enjoyable. I'd love to continue the conversation in years to come. And yeah, in terms of following us, it's easy at Delete Me on Twitter or joindeleteme.com.
Perfect. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for listening, and until next time, stay free.